Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Good Thursday morning to you, the 11th day of December, 2 weeks from Christmas. Coming up in 30 minutes, I've got a low-budget little Christmas event you can do with the kids. Throw them in the car and go cruising around Northern Virginia to the best Christmas decorated houses you'll find. I'm sorry, I muffed that. It happens. I've been dipping into the eggnog, Cassie Smedley.
The season. Start whenever you want.
Michelle Kettner from Northern Virginia Magazine will give us the 13 Northern Virginia houses with the best Christmas decorations. Maybe your house is on the list. That's Cassie. I'm Larry, and joining us now is K.T. McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump. And if you're vexed for a Christmas present, I highly recommend her book that she wrote, Revolution, all about the first Trump era. And I think that it actually sort of gives context to what we're seeing here from the second Trump administration. KT, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
So this exercise in the Caribbean Sea where U.S. forces and law enforcement seized an oil tanker was a remarkable thing to see, only in that for the first time in my memory, these sanctions against a bad player on the world stage are actually being enforced. We've had oil embargoes or oil sanctions against a lot of countries, but that doesn't stop them from selling on the black market and pushing the oil. But here we've actually, is it outside of the confines of these sanctions for the U.S. to do what they did?
No, and there's precedent for doing this. With sanctions against North Korea on weapons, we've seized Western ships going in and out of North Korea, so have other countries. So there's plenty of precedents for it. But the brilliance of it, and this is just the Trump brilliance of it, is Maduro. Let me just run you through the numbers.
Yeah.
These oil tankers, again, there's sanctions against them. Nobody's enforced them. They're probably making probably $200 million a week on these sales. It's discounted oil. China buys it. Others buy it. What Venezuela needs every week to meet budget is about $200 million. And that's to pay for the military, pays for the government. It's their only source of income. They only have $1 billion in reserves. So if you cut off that oil, if you cut off that $200 million a week revenue stream, within a very short period of time, Maduro has no money. Yeah. He can't pay his military, can't pay his generals, he can't pay off all the corrupt politicians. He becomes very vulnerable. That's why when you listen to President Trump and people say, are you going to invade? Are you going to do this? You're going to do that? And he keeps saying one phrase. He said, Maduro, time is running out. And I think that's what he means.
Well, and as Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, said this morning in Oslo, in her opinion, Venezuela's already been invaded by this totalitarian regime that is basically a kleptocracy. And with this kind of pressure that you just so brilliantly detailed here, Katie, I have to ask, will Maduro make it in his position to see 2026? Will they work out? They used to always work out something with, Uruguay or Chile, some sort of, banana republic exile. Is that what's in the works behind the scenes here?
I don't think anybody cares what happens to him. It's getting rid of him and getting rid of the kleptocracy that you talked about. Is there a government in waiting? Can somebody go in and do a very different deal? One of the things that the United States will want to do, and President Trump has talked about this before, is Venezuela is one of the richest countries in the world, potentially, if it's well run. It has oil, it has other resources. And what if it sells that oil, instead of on the black market to China at a reduced rate, what if it sells it to America? What if the United States goes in and helps develop that industry? The oil industry in Venezuela is old, corrupt, nothing really works right, nothing's been invested in it for a long time. You could see Venezuela suddenly become a prosperous, wealthy nation. You could see trade between the United States and Venezuela. And it's part of Trump's whole policy of strengthening the Western Hemisphere.
Okay. So what about the timing, though? You just gave the numbers on their reserves and the kind of money that not only this oil, the illicit oil trade was bringing in, but also, of course, the drug trade, which has kind of been stifled here with the military strikes. Will he make it to the end of the year, do you think?
Well, let's say he doesn't make it to summer. I don't know about the months, but his times are done. If
All
Trump cuts off the trade, he's got a month or two, and then he runs out.
All right. Meanwhile, we saw quite a bit of action over this proposed Ukraine-Russia deal. We had Zelensky say that they're not willing to give up any land, but that could just be public posturing. And I don't know, you saw this article from David Ignatius sort of detailing how this might end up. And correct me if I'm wrong here. It turns out if the deal goes through, Ukraine will end up basically getting Article 5 security protections without actually being part of NATO, and Ukraine gets to join the EU and some other bells and whistles. That sounds like a pretty good deal for Ukraine. Am I wrong?
It'd be a fantastic deal for Ukraine. The EU part of the deal is the important one because that means that the countries in Europe and others, they'll integrate their economies together, and that really gives Ukraine a whole lot more protection, even than military membership in NATO. I would be surprised if the Russians go along with it. But the bottom line here is that the new national security strategy that the president put out last week, which, by the way, I think is brilliant. Everyone should read it. It really says to Europe, hey, guys, get your act together. We are not going to underwrite you. We are not going to pay for everything. We have a lot of other things going on in the world. And so for the Europeans who somehow think they have a vote in this, when they're not the ones who are participating, they're not contributing, they're just squawking. And as President Trump says, all they do is go to meetings, but they don't get anything done. We're happy to sell the NATO countries weapons, and then they can give them to Ukraine. But the United States is no longer paying for this war.
Yeah. How far have we come in the negotiating process? Why does this deal look more promising than the previous iterations? Do you think it is more promising? Because it seems to always be we got to get the other guy to talk, come to the table. There's always an imbalance in the negotiation in that way. But what do you think is most
No, I don't think it is. I mean, I'm not sure who David Ignatius talks to, but no, I don't think it is. I think that I'm sure he talks to the Europeans, and he talks to Ukraine, and he talks to, the Democrats, but I don't think he has any particular insight into Vladimir Putin. And it looks to me like Putin has decided that he's going to fight this war to, quote, win this war, even if it takes him a long time and a lot of money and a huge sacrifice. He's just going to go, a foot at a time, take more territory in the hopes that he can squeeze off Ukraine. So, this war could go on for another 2 years.
Wow.
Tragically as that sounds.
Right.
Is there any, you just said you don't think Russia will go with it. Is there any indication that Russia is amenable to any plan? I mean, there won't be a peace plan if Putin doesn't want peace. That's the obvious bottom line here.
That's it, yeah.
Unless we put enough pressure on Putin to accept peace, and I don't think there's a stomach. Is there a stomach to put pressure on Putin, or
economic pressure?
Yes,
I think economic pressure. But wait a minute, the Europeans are saying put more pressure on him, sanction him out of the international banking system. But wait a minute, Europe, NATO allies, some of you guys are still buying Russian oil.
They're still buying their oil.
Yes, some of them are still buying Russian oil. So how does that work? We're supposed to do this, we're supposed to do that, and they don't even want to have their oil prices go up, so they're buying surreptitiously. They're buying what should be sanctioned Russian oil.
Right. They're buying it
Not
through
all
India.
of them, but enough of them.
But they know exactly
they're buying
where
it through
is.
India.
So we're going to start seizing those tankers.
I think one set of tankers at a time.
Yeah, and it's not in our hemisphere. Yeah, exactly. Not a direct threat. All right, KT, we'll leave it there. We'll talk to you soon, though. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Talk next week. Bye.